People with high self-control tend to spend less time in tempting situations. It's easier to avoid temptation than to resist it. Hi guys, Landyn here. Welcome back to the channel. This is our Chapter 7 discussion video. The Secret to Self-Control, if you remember, was the title of that chapter. Now that there was point 3 of the chapter summary. And I found it to be pretty poignant in regards to my own life. You see, this brings the hype down a little bit. Usually I'm speaking pretty fast. I'm not really trying to be impactful, but this is something that was very impactful for me as I've learned and grown older and things in my life have changed. When I was young, I didn't really think there was much of a purpose to life. I certainly didn't have a purpose to mine. Hell, I'm still finding out my purpose now. I'm 34, and only in the last handful of years have I discovered the importance of having a purpose and trying to follow that purpose and trying to make yourself the best person you can be. I think I can thank my wife and now my son as well for that. But when I was young, temptation didn't mean anything to me. I lived life to have fun. I lived life to do the things that made me feel good. And temptation really didn't exist because it was just kind of the norm. What happens when you live a life succumbing to temptation? Well, in my experience, you don't grow. You don't build a life worth living. You simply exist. And as I grew older, it kind of started to grate on my conscience, a kind of dissonance between what I was doing and what I began to believe I needed to become. And when you begin to feel that dissonance, when you kind of open your eyes and kind of see that, wait a second, there is more to life than simply following my desires and temptations, it changes the way that you view things like temptation. As I get older now, with the goals and ideas and ideals that I have, when I fall to temptation, which still happens, it's like a blow to my confidence, or a blow to my psyche even, to say, like, I know what I should be doing. I know what's going to help me move forward, what's going to help me grow, and I know what's not. And when you have that understanding of what will help you grow and what will hold you back, you feel worse about the situation of things that hold you back when you fall for them, when you fall for that temptation. So the line here, that building an environment and keeping yourself out of situations that allow for temptation, is very powerful, because that is something that I have kind of done in the last few years, begun to build safeguards around my lifestyle that allow me to stay out of major temptations. Things like going out to the bar with friends. You want to have a lot of fun. You want to have fun with your friends and stuff, but you build safeguards like responsibility. I have a son. Now, he wasn't intentionally there to create a safeguard between me and my temptations, but he definitely makes for a damn good excuse. That's for sure. Now that I'm older and I want to be the best person that I can be, which again is part of the whole reason that this channel exists, temptation means a lot more to me, and it's seen as an evil in a way, as incongruent with the kind of person that I want to be. You think of the Jocko Willings, you think of the Bedros Keuilians, of the world, the Tom Billius, Alex Hormozis. It's, you make a plan and you stick to it. I think the line is, F your feelings, follow the plan. In Jocko's case, I believe it was discipline equals freedom. And discipline means not falling for your temptations too. Or discipline includes not falling for your temptations. How can you build a situation in your own life where you don't fall for your own temptations? Right? If your temptations and your vices revolve around something like porn, you might have to go extreme. You might have to go full digital lockdown on all of those kind of adult websites. Say your temptation is drinking, partying with friends, drugs. Remember the story about the Marines from Vietnam? They came back addicted to heroin, but their situation was so different. The environment was so different from Vietnam to America that most of them didn't relapse. There's a juxtaposition to that in our current society in America, in Canada, where I'm from, where addicts go to rehab, they get treated, they come out, and the environment is not different enough. The relapse rates are inverse of what the relapse rates were from heroin-addicted military servicemen in Vietnam. The relapse rates are sky high. In some studies, they say almost 90%. Why? Well, when you, say, are raised in a neighborhood where the kinds of drugs that you become addicted to are accessible, and you go to rehab and you get clean, and then you get put back out in the same neighborhood, well, those drugs remain easily accessible. And then it's on your willpower to stay out of them, to not get involved in the drugs. And as James Clear says, willpower is not going to get you through. You can't do everything on willpower. That's why we build a lifestyle that eliminates the need for self-control and willpower, right? That's why we build a life that eliminates temptation as much as possible. It's impossible to eliminate it altogether, and we're all, at some point in time, going to fail and fall victim to our temptations, right? It's kind of human nature at this point, but personally, I think it's our duty to do our best in maintaining the integrity of the person you want to be, right? So if you have something you've labeled as a vice, as a temptation, as bad, and you're trying to get away from it, I think it's our job, our duty to do our best to push that thing out of our life entirely and make it as hard as possible for that thing to come back in to our lives. I never had any major addictions, I don't think, though alcoholism runs in my family. But one thing I did do a few years ago was I did my best to very drastically reduce, and now I'm working on the path to completely eliminating all online pornography, anything like that. I mentioned it earlier, and for the people that have like a problem with that, like I said, I think extreme measures need to be taken at times. You know, you think about these guys like sex addicts and stuff like that, and the stories I've heard of people that I know and things that have happened within the lives of the people that I know, like you know that like, hey, that stuff is real. In my case, though, you know, I just felt that it had become so normalized when we grew up, like, we're children of the internet. I'm 34, like probably the first generation of kids who kind of grew up with a developing internet, and like we're the first generation where that stuff was accessible since the time our brains were still developing, like as kids. And it's worse now. I mean, now with all the things you see online, OnlyFans and this and that, temptation is rampant. I just felt that it was negatively impacting my relationships with the people around me, with my now wife. And so I did what I could, and it was hard, to drastically reduce what I was looking at online. And now I'm on the warpath to completely eliminate, because I haven't completely eliminated. Like, every now and then, I'll still get the inkling to, you know, take a peek at the hub, and it doesn't help me become who I want to become, right? And so if it doesn't help me become who I want to become, and I've determined that it is an enemy, what am I willing to do to eliminate it? I think in the spirit of building an environment that doesn't allow for temptation, or that keeps temptation as far away as possible, maybe even for someone like me who doesn't actually have a problem, but who has a willingness to take extreme action, maybe I should do the same thing and just block all adult content on my phone. I have my iPad, but I don't use that for media. That really is only used for taking notes and looking at these videos, filming these videos, right? And then maybe YouTube every now and then. It's really only the phone, the most accessible thing that's always on us, that makes it so that you could just so easily delve into that kind of, that world, whatever your temptation is. And I think I'm going to do that. You hear these things like bloom, like brick, whatever that keep you away from social media. I don't have a problem with social media. I skim Facebook and Instagram maybe 15 minutes a day, although I used to be a lot worse, compulsively. I spent a lot of time attacking that habit and making it hard for myself to access those apps. And it worked. And I recently changed phone platforms. I went from Android, where I was an avid Android user for 15 years, to what I'm filming on currently is my very first Apple device. And that's also helped because I'm using a platform I'm not used to. It's clunky for me to get around. I hid the social media into the main apps tray, or like off of the main screen, I guess I should say. And so it's slower for me to get to them, and that helps as well with regards to social media, which is part of the reason why my usage is so low. But it's almost insidious, the things that you see with regards to temptation. My wife and I, we were watching a movie on Amazon Prime last night. What movie did we watch? Oh, Troy. Yeah, with Brad Pitt. And a classic. Every ad that came on was for a betting app, like a sports betting app or a gambling app. And that's relatively newly legal in Canada, like within the last 5 years. But it is incessant all the time. Every single time that movie went to commercial break, it was friggin' BetMGM, FanDuel, Bet365, you name it. My wife and I were looking at each other like, what the hell is going on here? And how is a gambling addict supposed to stay away from this if they can't even watch TV without it bombarding them? Now, my wife and I don't watch a lot of TV, and neither of us are gamblers. I've been to a casino twice, and one time I won $300, one time I lost my 50, and that's it. It doesn't really hold any value for me. But people who have that problem, and I know people who have that problem, like that's going to make it very hard for them. And I don't have a solution for how to keep those advertisements and things out of somebody's life. But I can tell you that the solutions might have to be extreme. And sometimes they seem that way. Although sometimes it seems like things that are or were normal seem extreme now. I think that's kind of my main goal now, is to get back to the kind of sense of normalcy that we had 15, 20 years ago, right? Where we weren't always looking at our phones. You know, we were able to communicate with people, real people, and truly connect, not digitally, but physically. And as I'm growing older, my digital temptation is slipping. I'm successfully killing that off, right? I spent years addicted to social media. We mentioned porn. You know, I used to smoke a lot of weed. I was definitely habitually addicted to that too, and I stopped smoking that. Most of the time, if I do buy weed and smoke it, it like goes bad before I finish the bag, which is totally fine. You know, I don't really care. So the only thing that I really have a vice for right now is probably alcohol. My wife and I do a pretty good job of minimizing the use of that these days as well. It's a lot easier when you have a kid, a young kid, to be able to control yourself. Though I always have noticed that it's easiest when it's just not accessible, when we've built a lifestyle and a household that doesn't allow for that temptation. I spent quite a bit of time skirting around the topic in the video, but I hope it kind of like gives anybody watching a good view of my thoughts on temptation and the things that have affected me, the things that I've seen affecting the people in my life, the way that my viewpoints have changed on temptation and life in general. That's unclear, I'll liken it to this. When you're a child, you don't have really any consciousness until what? There's a meme that talks about when you turn 4 or 5 and suddenly you have consciousness. And you can think of something outside of what's happening that day at that time, and your consciousness expands to the world around you, and you finally kind of truly see the world for the first time. And that's how I felt when I finally stopped feeling as though life didn't have a point or didn't have a purpose. That's kind of how I felt when I realized that there was more to life than doing what I wanted, when there was more fulfillment in doing things that would help me achieve what I aspired to be, things that would help me achieve anything, than just doing what made me feel good in the moment. Although doing what makes you feel good in the moment is still always a temptation. That's one I haven't yet figured out how to eliminate. I don't know if I ever will be able to. If you're watching this, maybe you have an idea. If so, leave it in the comments for me. I'd be interested in reading it and communicating with you all more about this topic. You might be able to tell this one's come right off the top of my head and is maybe a lot slower, more somber than any of the other videos that we've talked about or any of the other videos that I've put out, but it's a heavy subject. It's deeper than you might think at a glance, and temptation affects a lot of people. I do firmly believe that James is right. The people with the most self-control don't put themselves in situations where they might be tempted by certain things. And I can't tell you how to apply that to your own life. But I can tell you that it's probably worth it. The changes that I've made to mine, and maybe future videos will delve deeper into that, they've made a huge difference in the quality of life that I live now versus when I was young. And also what life means to me and to those around me. Once again, it's been great talking to you. I'm Landyn Valeric. We're going to continue with Atomic Habits later this week. I guess next week. It's November 30th, so happy December tomorrow, everybody. I'll get that video in the next few days. And until then, I hope you enjoy. Think a lot about temptation. And maybe try and think about eliminating it from your life and see what kind of changes happen and what gets better. Probably nothing will get worse. Until next time, though. Goodbye.